What is up, guys? My name is Eli Fishman, and today I'm very glad to be joined by Robert Turbin for an interview. Super Bowl champion, longtime Seattle Seahawk running back. Robert, thank you so much for coming on today.
Appreciate you having me, boss.
Thank you so much. What are you up to nowadays, and what's going on with you?
I'm still training, so I'm an active free agent right now. Obviously, with the season coming to a close, we'll see what happens there. Last year I wasn't signed until the end of the season, so there's still a chance. But I'm doing my own podcast and doing some TV stuff for CBS here in Northern California, amongst other things. Staying busy.
In terms of a return to the NFL, are you missing it more? Are you enjoying having some free time and giving your body a rest a little bit?
Oh man, I miss it every day. I mean, I've had enough free time. I feel like, with things being kind of cut off, OTAs not happening, training camp being abbreviated, all because of COVID and everything like that. I think, us as athletes and competitors have spent enough time at home. So I like to get back out there on the field.
What do you see for yourself in the future? What does the future hold for you?
Man, that's a big question. I'm the type of guy that has a lot of goals. Um, and so there's a number of different things that I want to do. There's a number of different business ventures that I have in mind. But short term, being in the media space, long term, I like to get into a management role, whether it be in football or even basketball. I have a huge passion for the game of basketball. I always said if I wasn't an NFL player, I'd be in the NBA. So, I like to get into that space a little bit as well.
In terms of just playing in the NFL in general, what have you taken away and will continue to learn, off the field? What has the NFL taught you, between the ears that, you will carry with you forever?
There's a lot of fantastic football players out there, a lot of fantastic athletes, and one of the things that you realize is greatness happens, within, and it's different for everybody. So what I feel like, what I do, and what I feel, what it takes to be the best, uh, is different for someone else. Uh, and if it's like that in football, in sports, it's certainly like that in other realms, in other professions as well. And so adapting to different personalities and people is one of the things that is really going to stick with me moving forward, as I progress into my next careers. Uh, you know, whenever I'm done playing football.
I know you do a bit of coaching at camps too. What would be your biggest piece of advice for a young athlete right now, a young football player?
Yeah, I've lived by this acronym HDHD: hard work, dedication, heart, and desire. Obviously, you got to have hard work. Dedication is, really applying yourself to the game. Eat, sleeping, and breathing. What it is that you want to accomplish, uh, and then heart is the passion that you bring to the table, and the desire is just to dream big, and I always tell the campers, everybody can wake up every day, have a schedule, and do what it is that they're told to do. But what really separates you is what you're doing when nobody's looking, when you're quote unquote not supposed to be working out, or this is your time off or your day off. What are you doing on those days? Are you, you know, taking those days off? I'll tell you right now, the great ones don't take days off. They're constantly uh, striving to be what it is they're trying to be, the best.
Talking about your time in the NFL and the Seahawks dynasty, those years that you were there, a couple Super Bowl getting there, a victory. What it was it about that team and coming together and putting that work in that made that team so special.
We challenge each other in ways that you would only see maybe from a family, like your own family members. It's like if you have brothers or sisters, oftentimes you'll hear, a younger sibling talk about how they grew up with older siblings, and they were the one kind of getting beat up and stuff like that. But it's like, it's like tough love, and then they grow up, and it's just like, I can deal with anything because of my older sisters or my older brothers, or whatever the case may be. That's kind of how it was with our team. We held each other to such a high standard, and it just didn't matter who you were, whether you were, you know starting quarterback and Russell, or the last guy on the roster. You were held to that standard, and we held each other to that standard. We fought each other, we argued with one another, but at the same time, we loved one another, we had each other's back, uh, all the way to the end. And that's really what propelled us to be such a great team during that time.
What about playing with Marshawn Lynch as your co-running back? What exactly did you pick up from him through all those practices? He's one of my favorite running backs of all time, personally.
Yeah, no, Marshawn is definitely just a different dude, man. He played the game with his heart, and oftentimes, I mean, he obviously had a lot of skill and a lot of natural ability, but at the end of the day, when you watch him play, he played with his heart. He just always wanted it more than the next guy, and that's what made him so special.
What's it like playing CenturyLink Field? It gets as loud as it get. Can you hear anything? Is it hard to hear play calls sometimes?
Yeah, you barely hear anything out there, man. You're like screaming at each other, and you're like standing right next to each other. But that's what makes that place so special, man. The NFC Championship game against the 49ers, the game winning throw in overtime, I think that was against Green Bay as well, to Jermaine Curse. I mean, we've had playoff games against the Panthers. That it's just nothing like it.
Just a general question: did you get a better night's sleep the night after you won the Super Bowl or the night after you lost?
Oh, definitely. That's actually a good question because, um, yeah, nobody slept well after that loss.
After the win, being on the field, kissing the Lombardi Trophy, all like that. What was that like?
That was just a surreal moment. The confetti, I didn't even know what to do in that. Like, like the tie just stood there and just watched the confetti fall. I never won a championship before, like all the years. I mean, when you play sports, it doesn't matter what level you're at, whether it's Pop Warner or you play to win, and you play to win a championship. You wanna hold the trophy at the end of it. And I've been playing football since I was 10 years old, so all the years that I played football, we never, I never won a champion. The only time was a conference championship. We won our division. Which was a huge accomplishment, especially for our school because it was the first time it had ever been done. But there's nothing like, we went to state also that year and we lost by a touchdown. So it's nothing like winning like a state championship or a championship game.
If you could go into one offense right now, just the way that it's formed, what offense in the league would you pick?
Man, I kind of like what they're doing. I mean, who doesn't like what Kansas City does on offense? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, obviously, I'd go back to Seattle in a heartbeat and play with my boys, but they're pretty dynamic. I'll tell you a pretty dynamic offense. It'd be hard to tell this year because they're not doing all that well. But I generally like what the Cowboys do offensively when they're healthy. Um, they have a pretty dynamic scheme, probably more so than people think.
In your opinion, as someone who was part of that dynasty with the Seahawks, what is the most important facet of an NFL team? Is it one part of a playbook, or is it just being well rounded in general? Does it really fall that much on the coach or a quarterback? What's your opinion on that?
Winning starts from the top down, and if you have great ownership, you'll have great management. If you have great management, you have great coaching. You got great coaching. You'll have great players, and you'll be able to win. And it doesn't always work out like that. I mean, but you can have fantastic players, But if your management is off or your ownership isn't great, then those teams tend to still find ways to lose. You see it. You see it all the time. How many years have the Browns been so talented but missed the playoffs? Uh, how many years have the Steelers not been so talented but still find a way to go 8-8? You know, like last year. I mean, they went 8-8 with nothing. Why is that? They have great management. They have great ownership. And so, if you run your organization from the top down, right? If if you run it the way that it's supposed to be ran, professionally, respectfully, you know, being innovative and having versatility, it just trickles down from there, and your team will always have success.
Was there a moment in your career so far where it really hit you like this is really a business and that's what it is?
Yeah, I sprained my ankle in 2015 preseason, week 3 against the Chargers. Got hit. It's weird, you know. So I didn't roll it or anything like that. It was impact, and I got a high ankle sprain. A high ankle sprain is a pretty significant injury. I wouldn't call it serious, but it keeps you out a good 6 to 8 weeks. 5 to 8 weeks, depending on what grade it is. Um, and if it's a high enough grade, you can tear a ligament in your ankle. And me not really being knowledgeable about a high ankle sprain, ankle sprain. I mean, people sprain their ankles all the time. You walk it off and you're able to. But this one really stuck. I mean, it really kind of stuck with me. So, you do what you do. You get your X-ray, you get your MRI, and you figure out what's going on. I have a high ankle sprain. Well, guess what? That means I'm gonna miss the last preseason game and likely the first 5 weeks of the regular season. And during those first 5 weeks of the regular season, if I'm still on the team, that takes up a roster spot, a 90-man roster, which goes down to 89, with one of those guys, being injured. And you can be put on injured reserve, which will free up a roster spot. That's part of the business. But Seattle chose to cut me after I got hurt, which is really the sucky part. I was there. I was able to stay for the last preseason game. And then after the last preseason game, they let me go. And I couldn't believe I was alive. I'd never been cut before, and it just amazed me. I was kind of at a loss for words. And man, I can understand, maybe being cut if you're not playing well or something like that. But while you're injured, it's kind of shady. But as you grow in the league and you gain more experience, you realize that it's not. You A lot of us, I won't say all of us, but some of us get to a point where we understand the business to a point where it's like, okay, what if I was the general manager and I was the one making decisions on roster spots? Because every spot is, it's like, oh, there's only 22 players on the field at a time. But man, all those 90 spots on the roster, I mean, it really matters. And you have to decide whether, like last night, for instance, you watched Monday night, you watched the Ravens
Browns,
and the
yeah.
Browns. What if Lamar had an injury that he couldn't come back from in that game? The backup quarterback then goes in and tears his ACL. The Ravens have opted on their roster, which is, it's cut down this year because of COVID. They made new rules, but let's just assume it was 90. The Ravens opted to use one of their roster spots for something else instead of bringing on a third quarterback, instead of traveling a third quarterback. That's a decision that the general manager and that team made as an organization. So now, worst case scenario, you're in the fourth quarter in a tight game, in a divisional game, with no quarterback because your top two quarterbacks have gone down. And so those are the type of decisions. Like, man, do we we need another rush spot for a defensive lineman. Do we need another rush spot for offensive? Like those are choices that you have to make. And so, with me, it was like, man, a lot of us take it personal as players. When we get cut, we get traded, we take it personal. But you got to scale it back, and you have to think about it in business terms. You have to. I learned to put myself in the general manager's shoes, and it helps you cope with the decision a little bit better. What would you have done? Would you have cut yourself? Would you have traded yourself? You can understand why they make those type of decisions. It's really hard. It's not always personal. It's not about this player sucks or I don't like this player. It really comes down to number one, finances, making cap space, or making room for another roster spot because someone else got injured. So we need your roster spot to fill that need. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but that was my first, real experience of really like, wow, the business.
Looking at the jerseys behind you, I think of all the people you meet in the NFL, celebrities, former players, everyone. Who have you ever been starstruck? Who are you starstruck by the most when you've met?
Man, um, this one probably is gonna come at a surprise, but it was my rookie year, so it was like one of the first people that I met when I joined the Seahawks. But it was Leon Washington. We talk about returners. Leon was, he was a phenomenal kickoff and punt returner. When I was growing up as a kid, that I watched him, take the ball to the house all the time. I was a little bit starstruck, by him. Um, when I was with the Browns, I got an opportunity to meet Jerry Rice though, and that one was, I didn't even know what to say. I grew up in the Bay Area, so I was a 49er fan. My top three favorite players of all time are Barry Sanders, Deion Sanders, and Jerry Rice. And so when he was at practice that day, and I got a chance to shake his hand, it was it was so. It was fantastic.
Who was the best player you've ever seen in person played against, played with?
Marshawn Lynch. It's Marshawn. When I came into the league as a rookie, my favorite running back, I believe at that time, because I think LT was done, but Adrian Peterson was still playing. He was with Minnesota, so he was in his prime. I really idolized Adrian Peterson. I tried to model my game after him a lot when I was in college. Just the way he ran so aggressively, especially when he broke away. But Marshawn just had so much versatility. Um, he made plays that are really, really only special people can make those kind of plays, man. And so at the end of the day, that's who it was for me. He's the best player I've ever seen in person.
What's he like in the weight room? That's what I want to know. How much does he squat?
He didn't lift that much.
Really?
Yeah, I'm sure he can squat a lot, but lifting wasn't his thing. He was more he was more about movement and mobility. I remember him one time kind of giving me a little advice, and he talked about like being really dynamic on the ladder. Ladder is like, you think about the ladders, like, oh, the ladder is really basic, but as you grow, you learn quickly, like, oh man, there's a lot of dynamic things I can do. There's a lot of drills I can do on this ladder, working my feet that I didn't know, that kind of go past your basic icky shuffle and stuff like that. So I don't know if that was his favorite drill, but I know that that was one of the things he advised me to work on.
All right, man. I think that's it. Thank you so much for coming on today. I really, really appreciate it.
Hey, no worries, man. Thanks for having me. Had a great time.